I never thought retirement would sound this loud. Not from engines or explosions, but from silence. Out here on the edge of New Texas, the wind carries nothing but dust, and every night the coyotes sing to the stars like they're mocking me. After 30 years in service, fighting wars on planets most folks can't even pronounce, I thought a ranch would give me peace. I bought this land cheap, a sagging barn, a handful of cattle, and one horse mean enough to bite me every chance he got. It was supposed to be simple. Feed the animals, fix the fences, watch the sun burn down into the horizon. But simple turned into empty. Nights dragged on longer than they should. The house creaked like it was sighing under its own loneliness. I'd sit on the porch, drink in hand, staring at the stars I once fought beneath. Funny thing about retirement, it doesn't quiet the ghosts. It just gives them more room to whisper. That night, the one that changed everything, I almost didn't notice them at first. 11 shadows on the ridge, moving slow, like they carried the weight of whole worlds on their backs. Thought maybe it was a trick of the light, but as they drew closer, the air shifted, thick, uneasy. My hand went to the shotgun resting against the chair, a habit I never unlearned. They stopped at the gate. The moon climbed high enough to reveal their faces. Not human. Their skin caught the silver glow like polished stone, eyes shining with colors I'd never seen in any bar, battlefield, or back alley across the stars. 11 strangers. 11 stories etched in their eyes. And for the first time in years, I felt the silence of the ranch break, not with sound, but with the weight of something about to begin. Up close, they looked like survivors carved out of grief. 11 women, each different in shape, color, and bearing, but bound together by something heavier than blood. Their cloaks were travel-worn, edges torn, dust clinging to the fabric. I'd seen soldiers carry that same weight in their shoulders, the weight of losing everything and walking anyway. The one who stepped forward stood taller than me, her skin a soft silver blue that caught every trace of moonlight. Her eyes burned amber, bright but hollow at the edges. Her voice was steady when she spoke, though the words cracked as if dragged across a battlefield. We are the bereaved circle. Widows of the Orion War. Our homes are gone. Our people scattered. We were promised sanctuary here. That name, the Orion War, was one I knew too well. I'd bled in it, lost men in it. Somewhere along the lines of friend and enemy, I remembered faces not unlike theirs, husbands and fathers who had died with rifles in their hands. And now here stood their widows, looking at me like I was the last card they had left to play. I wanted to tell them they had the wrong place, the wrong man. My ranch wasn't a sanctuary. It was a crumbling pile of wood and dust, barely big enough for me and my regrets. But then I caught it in their eyes, the way they clutched one another's hands, the way the youngest among them, barely more than a girl, kept glancing behind her, as if expecting the universe itself to come chasing them. So instead of sending them away, I pulled the gate open. Fine, I said, my voice rougher than I meant. You can stay. But this is a ranch, not a palace. They nodded once, relief flooding their faces. And just like that, the life I thought was settled cracked wide open. I figured they'd stay a night or two, maybe long enough to catch their breath before moving on. Instead, by the second morning, I found them mending the fences I'd been too tired to fix for months. Their hands moved quick, practiced, as if they'd been raised on labor harsher than mine. By the end of the week, the barn looked straighter than it had in years, the fields turned over with care I hadn't given them since I bought the place. They didn't ask permission, they just worked, as though earning their place without a word. Of course, living together wasn't smooth. One of them, tall and sharp-eyed, wrinkled her nose every time I cooked. My beans and cornbread weren't much, but I wasn't used to anyone insulting my food straight to my face. Another filled the silence with songs, low, strange melodies that reminded me of oceans I'd never seen. They were beautiful, sure, but at 2 a.m, beauty wears thin. And the youngest, the girl with copper-green skin, shrieked every time she got near my horse. Poor thing nearly climbed onto the roof just to avoid walking past the stable. But for every clash, something softer grew. Laughter found its way into the house, echoing against walls that hadn't heard a voice in years. The sound of their chatter filled the long evenings, drowning out the old ghosts that used to keep me company. Even my stubborn horse, the one I thought hated the whole universe, started letting them brush him without trying to bite off a hand. One night, sitting on the porch, I caught myself listening to the sound of them inside, arguing, laughing, living. For the first time in a long while, I didn't feel like I was waiting to die out here. For the first time, the ranch didn't feel empty. Peace never lasts. I should have known that. It was late evening when I noticed the dust cloud on the horizon. At first, I thought maybe the cattle had broken through a fence, but the rumble beneath the ground told me different. Engines. Heavy ones. I leaned on the porch rail, squinting against the fading sun until I saw the glint of metal, hover trucks, armored and bristling with mounted cannons. Trouble, riding fast. The widows noticed too. They went quiet, hands tensing, eyes sharpening the way soldiers do when danger gets close. By the time the truck stopped at the gate, I already had the shotgun resting across my arm. Old habits. A half-dozen mercenaries spilled out, their armor mismatched, their faces marked with the jagged tattoos of the Rithari Syndicate. I'd heard the name whispered enough times in the war to know exactly what kind of scum stood at my gate. Their leader stepped forward, tall, ugly, with a voice like gravel. "Those widows," he growled, jerking his chin toward the house, "belong to us." Belong. The word hit me like a hot iron to the chest. I looked at the widows, standing close together on the porch, fear sparking behind their defiance. Something in me snapped. Maybe it was all the years of war, all the bodies I'd seen claimed by men like this, maybe just my own damn stubbornness. I stepped forward, the wood of the porch groaning under my boots. The shotgun caught the last light of the sun as I lifted it. "You picked the wrong ranch," I said, steady as stone. The mercenary grinned, showing broken teeth. He thought I was bluffing. He didn't know I'd been waiting years for something worth fighting for again. They came at dawn, like all cowards do, thinking the cover of morning light would catch us off guard. The hum of their hover trucks rolled across the fields, engines whining as armored boots hit the dirt. I stood by the porch with the shotgun in my hands, heart pounding like it hadn't in years. But I wasn't alone. The widows flanked me, no longer just refugees but warriors ready to draw a line in the sand. The syndicate mercs moved fast, rifles raised, their leader barking orders. I expected fear from the women, maybe panic. Instead, I saw power bloom. One of them stepped forward, raising her hands. A shimmer of light erupted into a barrier that crackled as bullets slammed against it. Another opened her mouth and screamed, not a human scream but something raw, shaking the air itself until the mercenaries staggered back, clutching their helmets. I fired into the chaos, each blast dropping a man in the dirt. Years of training came back like muscle memory, every move sharp, every pull of the trigger steady. The widows fought like hell. One wove shadows that swallowed soldiers whole, another struck with hands that sparked like lightning. I realized then, they hadn't survived this long by running. They'd survived because they were dangerous. Still, the fight cost us. The barn caught fire, flames chewing through old timber. Fences splintered under the weight of hover trucks. The smell of smoke and blood filled the air, choking, heavy. But not one of us fell. We held the line until the mercenaries broke and fled, leaving their dead behind. When the smoke cleared, I looked at them, blooded, exhausted, but standing tall. They weren't my guests anymore. They were my family. And now the syndicate knew exactly whose ranch they'd tried to claim. It didn't take long before the smoke from the battle drew more than vultures. 2 weeks later, a ship touched down in the far field, sleek, polished, and far too expensive for any honest work. The insignia of the Interstellar Council gleamed on its hull. I knew before the ramp even lowered that this visit wasn't friendly. The envoy who stepped out looked every inch the bureaucrat, robes without a speck of dust, a smile sharpened into something that wasn't quite human or kind. He walked the land like he owned it, his guards trailing behind in perfect formation. I waited on the porch, arms crossed, daring him to say what I already knew. "You've taken in fugitives," he said smoothly, his eyes sliding past me to the widows gathered by the doorway. "They are not simply widows. They are carriers of information, fragments of secrets their husbands died to protect. Secrets entire empires would kill for." The widows stiffened, exchanging glances, but none spoke. The envoy's smile widened, as if he already tasted victory. "Hand them over, and Earth will remain untouched. Refuse, and you'll invite storms your planet cannot withstand." I let his words hang in the hot air. Maybe once, years ago, I'd have followed orders, weighed the greater good, and convinced myself sacrifice was noble. But retirement stripped me of illusions. These women weren't pawns. They were flesh and blood, standing on my land, under my roof. I shook my head. "Not happening." His smile didn't falter, but his eyes hardened. "Then you've chosen war. When politicians don't argue, it's because the decision's already been made." I watched the ship lift off, leaving only scorched grass in its wake, and I knew the quiet ranch I once bought was about to become the center of a storm the galaxy would feel. The night before the final fight, the ranch was silent. Not the hollow silence I used to live with, but the heavy kind that comes when everyone knows what's coming. The widows sat around the kitchen table, their strange hands resting on old wood scarred by years of use. No one spoke much. We didn't need to. War had a way of stripping words down to nothing but breath. At dawn, the sky darkened. Warships blotted out the stars, their shadows swallowing the fields. Dropships poured soldiers onto my land, syndicate and council dogs both. The ranch I once bought for peace became a battlefield. I stood at the front gate, shotgun in my grip, while the widows formed a line beside me. No one waited for orders. When the first wave hit, we met them like fire meets dry brush. Bullets tore through the air, my gun bucking against my shoulder, each shot a rhythm I hadn't forgotten. The widows unleashed their power without restraint, light that burned, shadows that devoured, voices that split the ground itself. The attackers thought they were hunting prey. Instead, they found predators who had nothing left to lose. The fight raged until my fields were nothing but scorched earth and broken machines. I bled from a gash across my ribs, but I kept firing. I couldn't stop, not when I saw them fighting like demons, refusing to fall. By the time the sun clawed its way above the horizon, the invaders were ash and silence. We stood in the ruins of the ranch, smoke curling into the morning sky. The widows gathered around me, weary but alive. For the first time, I saw not grief, but freedom in their eyes. I wasn't a retired soldier anymore. I was their guardian, their family, and together, we had carved out a home no one would ever take again.